Hello, and welcome to the Producers Guild conversation with the creative team behind Luca. We'd like to thank our friends at Disney, Pixar, and Angelotti PR for making this event possible. It is my pleasure to introduce our moderator today, Scott Mantz. Scott is a longtime member of the Producers Guild, and he is the recipient of the Press Award honoring outstanding entertainment journalism from the ICG Publicists Guild. From 2000 to 2018, Scott was a producer for Access Hollywood, and currently Scott is a contributing film critic for KTLA TV, and he is the host of For Your Consideration and You Know That Scene. Welcome, Scott. Welcome, panelists, and please, Scott, take it away.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction, Kyle. It is always a pleasure and a privilege to moderate conversations and Q&As for the Producers Guild. And I'm very, very, very excited to moderate today's conversation for Disney Pixar's Luca, which is streaming now on Disney+. Our panelists today are producer Andrea Warren. Hello. Andrea. So great to see you.
Thank you.
Director Enrico Casarosa, how are you? So great to see you. I love your shirt. It matches your poster.
That's right.
So full disclosure, I have now seen in a very, very short period of time, I've seen Luca 3 times. And I don't think I've ever seen a Disney Pixar film that fast, 3 times that fast in 26 years. But I love this movie, and this movie is so beautiful, so wonderful. It says so many things, and it says all of these things so easily and effortlessly. And I want to start with you, Enrico, about how this came together and how personal this story is for you.
Yeah, it really at the heart of these ideas when we're developing, and when as a director you kind of start thinking, it's really what is the relationship, what is that personal experience you've had that has really kind of done, really felt strong. And I went back to my childhood when I met my best friend. I was 12, and I was timid and shy, and he was this go-getter, running around all the time, very free to do what he wanted, much more of an extrovert. And it made me really ask myself, well, would I be the same person that I not had these years with him, had this amazing friendship where I certainly was challenged, was, out of my comfort zone most days. So at the heart of it, that was one part. And then, of course, it came with this beautiful setting because I grew up in Genoa. And so we would really, which is on the sea coast, the Riviera of Italy, kind of, if you think about Italy as a boot, it's where we lace up the boot at the top, not far from the French Riviera. And it's just a stunning place. It's very specific because it's actually very mountainous. So the mountains go straight into the sea. And we did really jump off of a lot of rocks and cliffs and jump into the water. And we had these amazing summers. So that came as an interesting part. And the second part was, we always think of a what if at Pixar, right? Why, what is the fantastical side? What is the animation, really fun visuals? And certainly having made a short like La Luna that was very fantastic and surreal, I wanted to bring some of that here. And so I started thinking, I've always been fascinated by changelings and shapeshifters and all sorts of folklore. They're all over the world, there's folklore. And so I just imagine, like, what if these, kind of sea monster creatures, and I love all those old maps with the beautifully illustrated old sea monsters. What if a kid was hiding that he could look human, but he has this whole kind of true identity. So it felt really interesting to childhood, it felt connected to the ways we feel odd, outsiders, so that you would have some sort of a shame, something to hide, and you're not showing all of yourself. So that's how those things came together in this pitch. And then slowly we had to go on the journey to really deepen the what were we saying about friendship.
Yeah, I want to ask you, Andrea, about that journey and about the evolution of Luca. Like, like what was Luca like at the very beginning, and how did he evolve to take on the themes of friendship, the themes of tolerance and acceptance, being true to yourself, breaking out into the world, living your life. And again, this movie does cover a lot. So how did you sort of evolve into taking on all those things?
Yeah, the story evolved a lot. I mean, I think, animation is a long process. The average time span is about 5 years. I've been on the project about 4 years, but right when I joined was when we had our first screening. And, that was involving more elements, I think, to this story. It started definitely with the friendship, and Luca and Alberto were in that, but we kind of had more kids involved in that. It was 4 kids instead of 3 with Julia. And there was kind of a Kraken element, and things got even kind of wilder in terms of magic, and what they were chasing was a little bit more of a quest that they were going on. And so I think that one of the things that became a guiding principle, I mean, as throughout production, the big question for director and producing director team is to figure out, like, what elements do we hang on to and what can go, what becomes our guiding light as we navigate. And I think that it ultimately became a process of just stripping things away. It didn't need the big Kraken ending. It didn't need more characters. It just kept wanting to come back to the friendship, the way that we all experience friendship as kids, and trying to capture that feeling. So that really became our guiding light. And I think the ending, once that solidified, really also helped create the clarity about the film that we needed. Enrico's own story involves leaving Italy to chase his dreams, of animation, by leaving and going to, America. And so I think it was like that part of his story was something that really always felt true to him to capture, and became something that we had to make sure we kept in the story, and that we kept it as an anchor of the ending of the film. So yeah, it changed a lot. But you know how it is. It's like you kind of need the story to keep telling you what it wants to be. And it just kept going back to that feeling of summer, that feeling of kids and childhood, and really wanting to make sure we captured and celebrated that.
So both of you have been part of Pixar for quite some time, but Andrea, for you, this is your first feature as a producer, and Enrico, this is your first film feature director with Pixar. So I want to ask you both, like, the unique challenges that each of you had, starting with you, Enrico. Like, what were the big hurdles that you took on for your first time directing a Pixar feature?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges is always, telling the best story that you can. So as the process of story, it's also much more collaborative. Having made a short, you're doing so much yourself. So the process is about letting in more collaboration, because we have a story team, and I come from story, so it's just, some of it's just like really more collaboration. So that was a huge learning curve. So learning every day, sometimes falling on your face and getting back up and doing it again and trying to learning from it. But I think still the hardest part was finding, we had a couple of challenges we put ourselves, which were hard. One is, we love to tell a story of an introvert who doesn't know what he wants, and he's dragged by this other guy. Like, he was an interestingly difficult character to nail, especially in the front part of the movie, because they're just a little harder. You have to get in their heads. And I think once we found the imagination element, it really started helping us to get behind them. It's easy sometimes with the kind of wallflower kind of character, introvert, to just not really get enough of a sense of him, or being frustrated by his own self-limiting character, right? So that was an interesting puzzle. And then the tone. So I made a very lyrical short that was really about a feeling, like a little poem of sorts. Now, I really wanted to bring some of that in a feature, but of course, if you were doing that for an hour and a half, you'd be, bored as hell, because if you make everything lyrical, nothing is lyrical, right? And so the challenge of it was like, okay, the movie needs to do so many more things, right? It needs to make us laugh. It needs to make us feel real, deep emotion, cry. Obviously, we always want these roller coasters. So I mean, that was the other challenge, finding a different, because we wanted to make a different movie with a different tone, finding that tone was the hardest part.
Okay, how about for you, Andrea? What were the unique producing challenges that you faced for your first feature?
Yeah, I think, the first one was Enrico and I hadn't ever worked together before. I think we enjoyed all the conversations we had before we both signed up to work together. But I think, making sure that, we're finding the right balance of, supporting Enrico as a first-time director, but also, finding that push-pull. And Enrico and I always had a pact of being really honest with each other and really straightforward about things. And I think that really allowed us to figure out every challenge as it came. The story was a big one to tackle. Like I said, it changed a lot and took on, we did a lot of screenings, just of the storyboards and trying to get it right. And I think, it was challenging to make sure we brought together the right team to do that and the right collaborators for Enrico in order to crack the story. It takes a lot of great minds to do that and a lot of dedication. And, and then obviously the other one that was just really crazy is right when we started shop production was when all of a sudden the shelter in place rules came into place. I mean, here came this pandemic. None of us knew what to make of it. It was such a serious, difficult time emotionally for everybody on the team. I mean, there was just a lot of difficult things happening, and so, and then there we were trying to stay on schedule, on budget, as if it hadn't happened, like just make the movie as if you were at Pixar and everything was normal, because really that was what we were facing, was still trying to come out on time and definitely, staying on the budget that we had originally planned for. So trying to navigate that was definitely tricky. I mean, I'm grateful to Enrico in his partnership of being ready to be scrappy and really figure that out as we went. And our team was incredibly scrappy and resilient about figuring all that out as well, including our talent. I mean, we had to send them iPads and microphones and, it was crazy. So that was all just such a difficult curveball. But I do think that we were grateful to be working still. I mean, we never lost sight of that. We never took that for granted. And even though it was long days and challenging with kids and school and Zoom and everything else, we appreciated the fact that we could kind of visit Porto Rosso on our computers, and that it gave us a sense of, I think, community through, such a challenging phase.
I have to say that when it came to producing and directing challenges, boy, you both really face the mother load with having to do it through the pandemic. But I gotta say, Enrico, one of the things that I was really thinking about just watching the film for the first time is the design of the sea monsters. Like, how did you work with your production designer, your art director, to just get the right look for Luca and Alberto and the families?
Yeah, it was such a fun challenge. I mean, I love to draw, so we always have a little bit of a starting point from my squiggles, and they're like, and they're pencil and watercolor, so they're kind of expressive. They're nothing terribly pretty, but or refined, but it kind of gave us something to talk about, something to aim for, because and even La Luna gave us something like, as far as the look, like, okay, how do we push the look? That was a bit like a storybook come to life, illustration come to life. So we knew we wanted to push it further here. But specifically to the monsters, there was this fun idea. Of course, they had to be similar enough to the human. So we, for every character, of course, we have two characters really to design and build, but was an interesting challenge, transformation being a very big puzzle of it. But when it came to the monsters, well, first of all, we realized that they shouldn't be super scary. They shouldn't be, like the point of the movie is saying, like, well, we call each other monsters. They call humans land monsters, and the humans call them monsters, but they're not, right? Like that's what we're saying with the movie. We're not, nobody is a monster inside, right? Other than maybe Hercule. But so we wanted some appeal, some beauty, beautiful colors. So we went for these very pretty, beautiful blues and aquas, and really the scales being, one by one, even kind of glittering with different colors. So we knew we wanted to be colorful. We had a lot of inspiration from these old maps that were part of, some of the cues of the fins. the details come from some of these old maps, especially when we thought about the family. I like that we actually ended up with more ancient sea maps on grandma, kind of cues. So grandma, if you look at it, has a very long tail, and the tail looks a lot like one of those leviathans or something like that off of those maps. And then, you know, with mom a little less, and with Luca, it's a little bit of a new generation, a little bit less of those cues. And then some of it's really at the essence. You always think, what's the essence of a character? Luca is curiosity. So actually, similarly to the kid in La Luna, big eyes felt immediately natural to me. Like, that's how I kind of, this is a guy who's going to take so much in, and he's so full of wonder. For Alberto, he's actually a little bit of a, you know, tiny bit older, a little bit more spikes, sharper, big mouth. You know, he's definitely a talker. So we really think of the character and the essence of the character when we start designing them. For him, for example, we went for the fins toward tuna, kind of strong swimming kind of fish, and for Luca, softer. His fin is nice and rounded, so he's a more of an innocent and curious character. So those are the kind of things that we think a lot about when we designed them, and those were like had to all come together, and they were really kind of confined to the problems that, of course, they had to be close enough to then transform into each other.
Yeah. I was going to ask Andrea, when it came to designing the sea monsters, what came first, the design of the sea monsters or the casting of who's going to play Luca and Alberto? Because I would imagine that casting might affect the look of the animated character.
A little bit. I mean, I think we definitely started with the look of the film pretty early on, especially because these characters needed to fit into the stylized world we were trying to create. And, you know, with animation, it takes a long time to create all those models and all that rigging and everything that goes into it. So that part came first. We don't really alter the characters too much to try to look like the actual actor, you know, but, you know, we want that match to really feel good. And so, yeah, we were, I mean, obviously so lucky with, you know, Jacob Tremblay and Jack Dylan Grazer. I mean, for such, you know, young guys, they are so experienced, and it's pretty remarkable all they've managed to achieve in their careers so far. They were just both such good matches for the character they were. They really embodied the spirit, and I feel like that's what really meshed well together. The look that we kind of already had and the characteristics that we already had kind of set in the script for those characters with those personalities that they brought naturally and then leaned into, obviously, as such skilled actors. I mean, Jacob is a very curious, likable, you know, kid, and he's just so joyful. And as an actor, certainly was able to, again, Enrico was saying, you know, we had a challenging character who was an introvert, you know, to really show like the restraint that he felt as a character, but the depth that was kind of waiting to be explored in him. And, you know, Jack he's such a daredevil go-getter. He really is a lot like that. I mean, he's joked in interviews that if anybody double dog dares him to do anything, he'll do it. He talks fast, he ad-libs, and added a lot of texture and flavor to that character. And then we were so lucky with Emma Berman. I mean, we met her here locally in the San Francisco area, someone who had done theater, but not really been in a film before. And she just brought the right quirky energy to Julia that was fierce and fun, but also vulnerable. So yeah, it was, those designs were kind of there, and then those voices just added so much. And when those two elements come together, it's so exciting, because then it really feels like they've come to life.
You know, I agree with you. She knocked it out of the park. I was like, oh, I looking up her
yeah, I know,
and I was like, oh, she, you know, this is like a big movie for her. So she was really just absolutely wonderful. So Enrico, you know, in doing my prep and research for this conversation, on Disney Plus, when you watch Luca, you have the option to watch an extra, which is all about your prep and research, which took you home. And I would love to hear all about that trip and how that trip shaped the look of Luca.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a wonderful opportunity, you know, when you're kind of like playing host. So that was really what this was about. In the beginning, we immediately knew, so that we had two trips. One was in the first one, really, I brought the production designers. It was a core team. We didn't have everybody on board yet, but that was the early on. And that was really, it came down to going to all these amazing towns, making the team really feel what it feels like to be there, see the details. We went to Camogli, which is this lovely little town that has a history of ship making. Then we went to Cinque Terre, which of course are the main inspiration for our Porto Rosso. And we roam all around, we walk between the towns. And then, if you're in Italy with an Italian, then there's a long list of food we have to try and places you have to go. So of course, this is all about, we need to bring authenticity to this, right? So that is, we joke, is what a tough part of the job. But yes, it was like a lot of, pesto comes from the region, trying the amazing basil there in the pesto, the focaccia. It's a region very famous for focaccia. Of course, gelato, we can kind of, it's hard to go wrong with gelato in Italy. But so it was really about feeling the place, the details of the place, the light, the foods, the music, the sounds. You really want then, because then that team comes back and can help me remember all those details, right? Because I was the one who like, well, no, actually in front of a window, there's these yellow things, and they're like, the shutters are green and they open this way. I was like, well, now they were the ones who reminded me, like, oh, by the way, there's this other detail it'd be nice to put in there. So that was so helpful. And then we sent the second time the team, and I think a lot of the footage probably from that one. So that is because we had the full team now. We had set build, the people who are designing the sets, the people who are designing the characters, the amazing talent that is gonna move the camera, do the camera, our DP of lighting, so they really even more so needed to see all those details and all those wonderful things. And again, for that one, interestingly, me and Andrea were supposed to go, and then we were so busy with rewriting, and for the next screening we had in Story, that we had to we realized like we can't go, which was such a bummer. So there were 2 trips. The second one we can take ourselves, but we sent everybody, and there was a long list of food that they had to try. So that was the list. I couldn't be in person. But again, such a pleasure and a real honor to kind of bring people to my culture and what I find interesting about the culture. It was a real privilege.
Andrea, when you were talking a bit about the challenges that came with the pandemic and with COVID, so I'm watching the film and listening to the work of Jacob Tremblay and Jack, and their back and forth. Like you would swear they were in the same room doing their voiceovers.
Yeah. We always wanted to get them together. That was kind of one of our ideas early on, was like how much fun that would be to get them to play off each other. And of course that just didn't happen. Logistically was impossible. But yeah, no, I think that's where, Enrico would act with them in the scene and kind of play the characters not present. And so that was on Enrico to try to recreate the performance of the other character in order to give them something to work off of. Because yeah, I mean, animation is like, you're in a room and a microphone and there is nothing around really to cue you. So a lot falls to the director to create the sense of like what that's going to look like. Sometimes we would show them pictures of the character, pictures of the scene. Every now and again, we would show them kind of the rough version of the scene just so they could get their head around it a little bit. But it requires a lot of the actors to really fill in those blanks. Because I mean, usually it's them in a studio with a microphone and that's it. But in this case, it was like them in a closet at their houses, with an iPad and nothing else. So yeah, we really lean into their acting skills to bring the emotion, the emotion and the moment to its fullness.
Yeah, Andre, hearing you tell that story it really makes it so clear. Something that we've always should know about animation, that acting for animation is harder than live action animation, because live action, you got stuff to play off of, whereas in animation, you don't. So yeah. Enrico, how did you get these very vibrant, lively performances under such trying conditions?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the key thing, first was a little bit of setting the goal for us to find some naturalistic performances. That meant that from day one, I was interested in the little mistakes or the little repetition or the, you know, the little things that are a little harder to get because we work in a vacuum. So that was one of the things, and always asking, how would you say it? So it's like also not being too, you know, we are never too super, give me exactly the script. It was like, would you say it some other way, Jacob, or maybe give me this one, don't even look at the line, and so we make sure we're not reading. Or there were so many fun little ways that we could try to bring this, right? And then the other way for me was just get in there and goof off with them and try to be as much in the moment as possible, and bring them something to react to. It honestly was way easier when we were in the same space, because then at least they have you to react to. Then in Zoom, they have you to react to, but with a delay and with, you know, with only a screen. So that became all quite a bit more painstaking. Luckily, we had a little bit, you know, for example, for Jacob, we had worked with him a few times in person, which was really great because we really got to get to know each other, and it was such a pleasure to work with him. With Jack, we actually auditioned him in person. Then we were whisked away to you know, work from home. So it was, you know, luckily he's so talented, and he's a very natural improviser. So that was great because he's just gonna give you 3 or 4 different versions. They're all a little different. He's riffing, so that was so much fun to work. And Emma, again, you're wielding this beautiful talent, very fresh and new. She hasn't done a whole lot, but it was herself that was coming through. So it was just so much fun to, you know, if anything, one joke I always make with Emma, it was hard when she needed to be really serious because her joy would just come out of every line. So sometimes I would overcorrect of like, this time you're really mad. Give me the angriest read, and that would be just about right.
Well, I gotta say, it's just such a testament to the filmmaking talents here, that you're able to go through all of that during COVID and get a film that looks like it was just made under your normal circumstances. So with the stay-at-homes like in place and everything, how did the workshop of the Pixar Workshop, because I was at Emeryville back in 2010 for Toy Story 3, and Lee Unkrich, the director of that movie, was telling me all about how other filmmakers working on other Pixar movies and shorts will chime in and give their notes and their ideas, and like it's really a team. So how did that team, like Pete Docter, how did all that work over that last year and a half? Andrea.
Yeah, it was you know, I think that was definitely an aspect of this that we really missed, was being in the room. There is nothing quite like having a big whiteboard up and writing down ideas and seeing a progression of a character being kind of sketched out and kind of all looking at it together. You know, but we didn't have that. And so we kind of had to adapt. I mean, it is tricky on Zoom. You know, it's like you kind of realize that in these brainstorming sessions, we're kind of all half talking at the same time. And there's kind of a fun energy that comes from someone talking and other people going, yeah. You know, like in the middle of it, you know, that there's this wonderful energy of idea building. And over Zoom, you know, you just can't do that. Like someone talks and it's like, I just wanted to, never mind, you know, and you lose the energy, you lose some of that overlap, and you lose comments even, because if people can't get in a certain moment, they kind of sometimes let it go. So I think that was really hard to replicate. I mean, I think the good news is that, you know, like someone like Pete Docter, you know, Enrico and I have both worked with him for many years. And so we at least start from a pretty comfortable interpersonal zone where, you know, we can help kind of, you know, overcome some of those challenges. But yeah, I think those team brainstorms were tricky. I mean, some of the things that were positive was that you could actually just invite more people to observe certain meetings, and be a part of it that way. And we could record meetings where Enrico would sort of sketch things how he wanted them. And then those recordings would be a good reference point for folks in production. So, you know, there were definitely some good aspects to it too. But I do think it's, you know, you're talking about some of that brainstorming. We definitely still sent rough versions of the film to other directors so that we could still have those conversations. You know, we kind of joked because, you know, we used to have offsites, you know, when we would like really roll up our sleeves and try to work something out, but we were like, it's, you know, we're all offsite. Do you still call it an offsite? Anyway, but you know, it's just kind of those funny things of when you really want to create focus on especially the story. So we, you know, we were grateful for everybody still coming to all those meetings and brainstorming sessions, and we eventually got where we needed to be. But
one thing that might be worth adding, what was harder is that we're used to getting in this in our theater and putting 200 people in there and watching it with those directors. And so what we only had people at their homes by themselves looking at it. So as a director, usually, you know, like, oh, that joke kills, good, we're good. That joke needs some timing tweaking. It's not as funny, not as many people laughed, or they used to laugh, now they don't, you know. So for example, for comedy, you have this harder job to kind of like asking people, did you laugh at that one? Or you were, you know, people are themselves at home. So you don't have this really very, very useful tool of reaction in the theater. Everybody's at home. So we did have a chance to do an audience preview, which luckily gave us one, you know, test of how is it playing, right? Because you're always looking for, okay, we need to tighten there, we need to move this around, or this isn't clear. It is now everybody on their own watching them. So that was a tool that I really was a little bit nervous about, because I'm like, oh, you know, does that joke need a little time after because people are laughing? You know what I mean? It was an interesting, wonderful tool we normally use that we didn't have.
Yeah.
Look at it this way. The next movie you make is going to be a piece of cake. Speaking of, you were talking about the ending of the film, which talk about a film that really sticks the landing with a powerful, very moving, tearjerker kind of an ending. But then the movie keeps going with the ending credits to the extent that you sort of like see what happens next. I just was so taken by the ending credits and like, oh, this is what happened after Luca left, and like what happened to Luca, what happened to his family, and like they're keeping tabs on him. Like tell me about the ending credits and like what went into that and the style of it, which looks very different from the rest of the movie. Enrico.
Yeah, like I was very keen in telling us a little bit of, I had a feeling that this ending would be a little more satisfying if you could see a little bit of what happens next, that things are okay, and that there's a distance, but there's a connection. So that was idea number one, that, like, you know, in my mind, Luca was going to go out into the world and slowly conquer the human world. And, you know, we joked that, you know, if it was a different kind of movie, you get the rotating headline on Life magazine, Sea Monsters gets a PhD, or, you know, years later. No, we didn't want to do that, but we wanted to give a hint of like, how does he go out and change the world a little bit? And so that was idea number one that I had. And then I always love My Neighbor Totoro and how they exactly do this, where the whole movie is about, you know, these kids being anxious about their mother being in an hospital, and you get the credits and mom comes home. And mom comes home in an illustration while you see the credits, and then you see that Totoro is a little bit still part of their life, and you see their kid's life going on. So I love that kind of little more information. It's almost a little more of a meal there. And then we thought, oh, what best way, right? Like sometimes we're inspired by the 2D world. We wanted to bring a little bit of the beautiful drawings and artwork into the 3D. So we're like, well, now we can just do it 2D for a moment. And so, and also a little bit of an idea of, you know, how are they in touch? So we had fun with the idea, oh, they maybe write letters to each other. And maybe, so we put a little bit of this idea of like they're writing to each other in there. So yeah, it was really fun. It was a fun way to put drawings, real, you know, like real drawings on the screen.
Yep. So, okay. So with everything that we've been through around the world over the last, you know, year and a half or so, so you have a film that is about friendship. It's about seeing the world, about being true to yourself, about acceptance, about the summer, about the joy of the summer, about your youth, about innocence, coming of age. So, Andrea, what's your take on just how all of these themes resonate so strong now, and the timing really is just so perfect for this movie to be seen?
Yeah, it does feel that way. From, like you said, from a few different perspectives. I think there's the need for connection. There's a need for understanding, and I think that is played out really beautifully in Luca's story. That it's that sense of curiosity that can bridge difference, and friendship that becomes that connection point also to bridge difference. And so I think that's a beautiful theme that feels like it's really relevant, and then I think connection. I mean, we're just all missing that in so many different ways. And so I think it'll be an interesting time as we kind of go through the next parts of the phase here to reconnect. I think we're all really missing that, and I think that that is the power of in this film is learning about each other, overcoming those differences, and ultimately having those points of connection start to build the coming of age story. It's those moments when you feel like you're vulnerable and you've kind of exposed a little bit of who you really are, and someone else responds positively to that. I love that moment in the film where they say, was that too much? And I think that there's that great moment of like, no, it's not, because when you're really feeling understood and seen, then you're not too much. And it's the beginning, I think, of that confidence growing, that ultimately helps you become, the person that you're meant to be. So I think there are a lot of lovely themes built into this film, about connection and confidence and growing up and being whole. I mean, I think that's an important aspect of it as well, which is like, you see Luca leaving on the train in the end, he is his whole self. He's not trying to hide anymore. He's Luca, and he can be that wherever he is. It's not one thing with this group and another with this other. So I think that that's hopefully a message that comes through as well.
How about for you, Enrico? What's your take on just the timeliness and the relevancy and just how resonates and it's perfect timing for Luca?
Yeah, it's kind of somewhat baffling what, but it's been so much part of the history of making this movie, and for the last year and a half it's been this huge obstacle. And now, yeah, there's a serendipitous, lovely connection to, oh, isn't it time to jump into the sea and splash around? I know we felt that we took the movie to Italy last week. We were there showing it around, and Italy so ready, like bring in tourism. They showed us this beautiful train that takes you from Genova to Cinque Terre, with all our characters on it. I was just blown away, looking at a Luca and Alberto as tall as a train. So I just love that it can be connected to a sense of a little bit of rebirth, and I hope people can go and enjoy these places and really visit them and really spend time there. So that is kind of crazy in itself, right? And yeah, I feel like we've been through so much in the last year and a half. I'm so glad that we're talking about what does it take to get past fear of each other, right? That's a big part of that. I love what you covered it, Andrea, but just that we have a curiosity at the center of our movie, bridging two fearful factions. I feel that that's kind of lovely, just that the fact that if we get to know each other, we wouldn't be afraid.
Well, thank you so much for the conversation. And once again, Luca is streaming now on Disney Plus. And when you watch it on Disney Plus, be sure to watch the bonus feature about the trip to Italy, because it is the perfect complement to the film itself. Andrea Warren, Enrico, thank you so much for joining us for this Producers Guild conversation, and all the best.
Thank you so much. We're happy to be here. Delighted to be chatting.
It was a pleasure. Ciao.